So, the organisers wanted to give the floor to speakers in 2 round tables. First, 4 major keynotes. Ghislaine Glasson, and for example, and will tell us in 5 minutes what take-homes they've had. And then we'll have a second round table. And that round table will see major institutions featuring large that were at the inception of this fabulous 2-day event. So let me call on the keynote speakers, get them up on the rostrum, if you wouldn't mind coming up with me.
Installez-vous. Tania, alors, ne partez.
All right, please don't go away because it's going to be very interesting. So let me introduce you to them. We have on my right Ghislaine Glasson-Deschaumes. She's a research engineer and a head of a cluster, Excellence Past in the Present, a very good cluster based within University Paris-Nanterre. Then we have Odile Henders, who is Professor of Comparative Literature at the University of Tilburg in the Netherlands. Now, on my left, I have Vania Virgili, Director of Technological Research at the Institute of Heritage Science at the National Research Council, which is the Italian CNR. And we have François Pernot, who is a Professor of Modern History, Director of the University Research School, Humanities, Creation, Heritage at the CY Cergy Paris University. All right, then. So I don't want to be too wordy, because we're lagging a bit behind. So let me hand over to Ghislaine Glasson-Deschaumes. You can stay seated or you can go to the rostrum as you see fit. The mic is on anyway. All right, thanks very much. Good afternoon to one and all. First and foremost, my thanks to the Foundation and the Ministry of Culture and for the cultural institutions that have welcomed us here so warmly and who've made it possible to open up a European space for conversation that we've lacked for the last 2 years. And this conversation has helped us collectively get across our solidarities for the Ukrainian people. What emerges very forcibly, in my view, over these 2 days, and which strikes me as very worthwhile and valuable for the future, is what I would describe as a European grammar for cultural heritage and scientific heritage. Now, this grammar opens up sources of potential, and many among us are aspiring for more Europe. And I think it forces our hand positively, and I'll tell you in what way it does that. Now, this European grammar, as I was saying, I would locate it in what I've heard in the plenary sessions and the roundtable sessions that I attended. I would localize it around semantics and more operational side of things as well. So thinking about pluralism as an actor, if you will, something else than simply accumulating juxtaposed diversity and that ignore each other and don't know that each other exists. It also involves itself in among where players are, based on where they live and grow and flourish. Bruno Latour, that particular notion is dear to his heart. So this is also a democratic condition to make heritage, but also epistemologically it's important, which flows from the idea that there's not one single knowledge any more than there's just one single language in order to cement heritage. The second principle is that of collaborative work, working together, working all together from different walks of life as well. I'll return to that point later on. So a cross-border collaboration as well, and even, I mean, what speakers have wanted, cross-European, with Europe and beyond European borders, collaboration at different levels as well, and showing those linkages in inter or cross-sectorial collaboration as well. And obviously, henceforth, this would involve citizens. I'd also add not only citizens, for that matter, from a legal perspective, but non-EU member residents in the European areas, to put it more, call a spade, the migrants. Now, the third semantic point is the ecology, is environment. And what I mean by that is that it's the environment understood from a philosophical perspective, a broader philosophical perspective than simply ecology linked in with the environment. And here I'm really thinking of Felix Guattari's approach. His approach linked environmental ecology with social and mental ecology. So thinking about climate change, how that links in with that, and matters going to cultural heritage, I think really this helps us make significant and very enthusing inroads, not only to broach ideas of preservation, conservation, and making something part of our heritage, but also other aspects that were turned to digital frugality in terms of cultural heritage, but also a reasonable use of heritage per se. Yes, I can pick up speed. I can see the clock is ticking. And my last point, and I can summarize basically what I want to say in one sentence. But anyway, political, cultural policy, focusing on social achievements, health, and linking all this with cultural memory, on reusing things, and a knowledge ecology as seen as a common good, with an opportunity to reassert and reappropriate the idea of tracking and tracing processes and procedures, and accessibility, not only of data, but accessibility of knowledge, to knowledge. Now, all this European semantics can be conjugated. I'm not going to develop this, but brings together past, present, and future, like a conjugated verb. We can talk about archaeology of processes, always done with critical insight, memory, and heritage are linked in, particularly in times of conflict, when there's destruction, but also in a post-conflict environment when you have to reinvent, rebuild in the wake of a war via using heritage in the public space. Now, of course, there are modus operandi. We need to think about what's potential and what can be made potential of. So semantics, a grammar that links intangible with tangible, natural with artificial, heritage, horizontality, making things work together rather than making a trade-off, but also thinking about heritage, objects, and as part of where you want to go. So this grammar, this semantic approach offers scope, offers potential for allowing words to emerge, to meet, to encounter, and to be translated. But probably more broadly, it's the gateway into a political and cultural heritage, and this is a gateway to lead to that and make it possible. Thanks very much. Goodness me, you've set standards high for the next speakers. Odile?
Yes, it's undoable to say what I have experienced these 2 days. So I have picked out 3 points. I'm very positive about them, but I also have some more critical perspectives. And the 3 points are digitization, materiality, and publics. First, digitization. I think the challenge of what we heard in the 2 days for heritage sciences obviously is in the use of new digital technologies that can make possible new inventories, new analysis, and invite new experiences, such as we have heard this afternoon, augmented reality, virtual reality, and so on. I was very much impressed by the example of the Notre Dame as a restoration project, but also a collective endeavor. Everything that is thought of now and invented now is useful for future projects as well. So the very tragic burning of the cathedral leads to something that is bigger than that, and digitization is the key here. However, we talk a lot about digitization, but we have not talked so much about digital culture. And digital culture very much is, what are people doing on Instagram? How are they talking in new formats of speech? How are they using apps? How are they making memes on a lot of heritage topics? And I think that is something that we have to take into account as well. Very important for heritage future. My second point, materiality. We have talked a lot about fantastic collections and data from antique places to a collection of sands today, really wonderful. But I think there was less interest in immaterial data, music, literature, performance, visual art. And I think in between the material and immateriality, there are really interesting questions, new activities, experiences, mediations, immersion. And in connection to that, I think that in immaterial culture today, there are a lot of interesting ideas and imaginaries on climate change. You find that in literature, you find that in video art, really on the top of things. And I think that these art objects can help people to become aware of what is happening to the earth, and also to help them understand it and to change their behavior. That is, of course, something that we need to think about as well. And then my final point about publics, and publics in relation to the diversity of voices. And I think that you have said that as well. We have heard a lot about audiences, citizen participation, stimulating younger generations to enjoy heritage. There was a fantastic example yesterday about La Traviata in an escape room that had to attract young people to the music and the story. But if we talk about new publics and audiences, we very much also have to make the point to go beyond Europe as well, au-delà Europe. And that also has to do, of course, with the fact that a lot of our heritage, our monumental cities, Amsterdam, Antwerp, are constructed in an imperial context and with money that was made in the global world. And I think we have to discuss this in heritage studies as well. And then my final point in this context, heritage in a local space is important also because it can help newcomers and new migrants who are arriving in Europe to experience the place, to understand what the place is about, but also to add meaning to the local heritage. And I think we have to take that into consideration as well. So if someone asks me, what have you been doing these 2 days? What is heritage? When I come home, they will ask it. I will say my final sentence, heritage is préserver, conserver, valoriser.
Heritage is activated, is part of activation, is part of being part of what's going on, providing a contribution.
Thank you very much, Odile. I thought Ghislaine has said everything, but you said even more, and it was a very inspiring speech. Thank you. Alors, je donne la parole à Vania, qui nous fait l'honneur et la gentillesse de...
So now I have next speaker to be speaking in French, I believe. Vania.
Je parle en français.
Yes, I'll speak in French to thank you and the organisers of this conference, to pay thanks to you, Pascal, Isabelle, and also the team that's worked with you to put together this event, the French government as well. And in addition to them, our French colleagues and friends. All right, then, first and foremost, I loved the 4 roundtables that I attended. I think we can find a red thread that pulls them all together. This is multidisciplinary between science, technology, human and social sciences, but also intersectorial co-creation between the scientists, the practitioners, the society as at large, and users. And so the first key message for me from the roundtable on preserving cultural heritage is these new materials, new technology, which offers new perspectives, new horizons at each point in the value chain of cultural heritage. In other words, knowledge, restoration, preservation, the usage, but also technological transfer to industry. It's very important with that in mind to think about establishing public-private partnerships based on projects that themselves are backed onto R&D. Second key message on climate change, the workshop devoted to that, is the fact that culture is part of our environment and the broader community. We shouldn't just only look at climate impact on built-up environment, but also culture and resilience. And this is why heritage should be seen as a doctrine of innovation and a vector to combat climate change. We also have a notion of tradition here, of expertise from past generations, cultural and material traditions, which can be used to mobilize the future, thinking about the role played by research and how it offers solutions to better engage local communities and also political figures. Because what we're lacking here is to put culture right at the heart of our climate action plan and the green transformation program. And to do that, we need to see greater interoperability among the various involved sectors, and we need to communicate on this, particularly from public authorities and communication to the political community. Third key message from the roundtable going to material heritage is that culture is part of sustainable development. That's true, particularly when you look at energy optimization of the 21st century buildings and thinking about restoration of monuments which are being attacked by microorganisms. You have to think about compatibility between the vegetation on these monuments, but also think about tolerance. Now, thus far, we've talked about energy transition and how heritage fits into that, but also digital transition. And this leads me to my fourth message. I think we're lucky to be able to make a distinction of the fact that we're not talking only about 3D copies or digital twins. This is in constant flux and flow, and this can flesh out narratives for thinking about the green participation of various communities, thinking about co-creation, for example. And I think this will prove very useful, not only for research, but also for people involved in cultural heritage and to the benefit of the community at large. So I attended these roundtables. A lot more could be said, but this is going to mark a milestone for R&D in European environment. Thank you very much, Pascal, therefore. Thanks very much once again to the French government and to the European Commission.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Vanya. Thank you very much. François, over to you. Thank you very much. I'd like to also jump on the bandwagon of this round of thanks. Thanks to the President and all the partners for this event. Now, what I took away from these roundtables that I attended, but also from the plenary sessions, is the following. Now, in terms of heritage for the future and heritage sciences, even though it's in rather scattered format, maybe it's a problem long term. European institutions are still getting involved already. They're creating progress. They've got R&D underway and multidisciplinary approaches. So there are reasons that are multiple. I have 3 points. Heritage is part and parcel for identity for our people. This has been the case in the past, but perhaps more so today. Heritage doesn't equate to memory in no way, no shape or form. Heritage is the intangible shape of our memory, and I think this throws up questions that have been asked many times, but have become more acute today. The challenge for the future is to know what we want to preserve, what we want to safeguard, artifacts or processes, or in fact both. And then why? It begs the question. To build an identity, a sense of belonging to a community, to hand on to future generations. But what about negative heritage? Wars, for example, or the most brutal or the most violent incidents in our history or societies. How do we deal with these things coming to us from the past? And this brings us to ask even more difficult questions, particularly in the international arena. The values to be ascribed to the heritage, and that are, as I say, they're much more difficult to grapple with even today. Now let's look at also opportunities. Again, today we've got new instruments, new tools, not so new as all that, but of course we're using them in an innovative fashion to collect, to gather, to manage data on heritage, to retrieve it when it's gone, or even to safeguard it in the first place. Because today we're not only talking about collecting artifacts, but collect the data on said artifacts, the heritage data, to go beyond multidisciplinary borders and create objects that are properly documented. Now, I'm not talking about twins or even augmented artifacts. I'm talking about documented cultural artifacts, to rebuild them after a fire or a war. Now, the procedures are still there to put together digital processes. I suppose you can also think about the fact that maybe it's too many, and maybe one day, perhaps they ought to get them more communicating with each other. And then a third source of motivation. How can we see heritage when you think about the environmental and societal challenges that are looming in the wings? Now, of course, we can turn to techniques in the past and collections in the past that help us safeguard heritage in a sustainable and eco-friendly fashion. But thinking about green renovation to avoid CO2 emissions, and then by training professionals as well, but also by giving information, providing support to citizens. And I think this involves, and when involved, I'm convinced of this, goes through education, definitions, culture. My colleague talked about a joint semantic or grammar. We need a vocabulary, a lexicon, writing in a common language to properly understand the notion of durability and sustainability in the arena of heritage. Now, of course, in the future and today, we need to think about training, education. But here again, thinking about this in a pluridisciplinary arena, this word cropped up considerably, I think, in all roundtables. Thinking about it in a multidisciplinary fashion or a cross-sectorial fashion, to continue to forge fresh practices, to build new activities that are properly suited to the contemporary environment. This process is underway. We need to consolidate it. And from this perspective, in my view, we need to continue to reinvent the training for a researcher, developing innovative curricula, working together, multidisciplinary, starting with the doctorate. And here again, and I reiterate, what I've heard shows that this is underway, but we need to continue down this path. And I'll round off on this particular point. European universities are, amongst others, a fabulous tool to pick up on that challenge and rise to the challenge. Thanks very much.
Dans les temps. Donc, merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Everything that was said really reinforces the idea for us organizers to present heritage sciences as integrated in the challenges that today's societies have to face, not just at the European level, but also at the international level. And all of these challenges are underlined by the agenda of the GPR Heritage, on which 18 European countries worked. So I suggest that you go to the Heritage Research Hub that enables to create a real community, to stay in touch, to create an actual network. You can really make it your own. You can post all the information that you want on. It's the Digital Heritage Hub. It's for you, is yours, and we see how cooperation is important in the diversity of the various participants, people in the room that come from scientific and professional backgrounds that are very varied. And this kind of network is important and interesting only if it's open and if it's active. So we hope that these 2 days enable to reinforce this joint work. Thank you very much to all of you, and see you soon. To end the day, we are going to ask the various organizers who are going to give the final word. So I will ask François Germinet, the president of the Cergy Paris University, Sylvie Rocaillot, president of the Paris-Saclay University, Marie Guy, head of the Science Social CNRS head, Serge Paquet, who is in charge at the European Commission, Isabelle Palot-Froissart, and finally Vladislav Uroda, who is in charge of heritage at the Czech Ministry. Thank you, Sarah. As I said earlier today, what we wish to do is to give the floor. We have a great panel here, representatives of the various organizations that organize the European Commission. Thank you very much to Jean-Yves Paquet, who's here. Of course, the Foundation for Heritage Sciences, the Paris-Cergy University, the Saclay University, the CNRS, and also the idea was to sort of like, give the baton, the flame, like in the Olympics, to the country that is going to chair to the European Union, Mr. Minister in charge of heritage. We are very honored that you're here today, and you will get the final word. You will tell us what it is going to be done on heritage as part of the coming presidency by your country. So I'm going to start with François Germinet. The idea is for you to tell us in 5 minutes for your various institutions what you believe the future is, what the outlook is on research on heritage. Thank you very much, Pascal. Good afternoon to all of you. I just want to mention 2 points. The first is that I'm very happy to be here, of course. And what makes me very happy is that I know almost nobody in the room. It doesn't mean that I don't think you are nice. It doesn't mean that I am a loner and I don't like to meet people. It's quite the opposite. We started with the Labex. We had a few number of researchers, engineers at the Ministry of Culture, the CNRS, a few people in the museums, curators, big organizations of the heritage world in France, but it was just a small number of people in the end. But now we have this symposium that is so widespread, ranging, that is so international, that it makes me so happy. It means that we started with 50, not 500, but just 50, and that's the number of people that were in the room when we started, and that it means that so many came to join us, other universities, other labs, other museum institutions, and not just in France, through complementary European networks. And in the end, we have approximately 3,000 people when we meet. But here, there's so many people here at the National Library, at the Louvre, and at the Centre Pompidou, which means that this is so wide-ranging. And I hope the scale will continue to grow. And dear Pascal, it is one of my hopes, one of my wishes, to give an answer to the question that you asked. So the University Cergy, it's called CY, we call it CY. We're very happy about this effort. The little piece of good news that we got is that last week the Prime Minister said that our initiative was called to be an excellent initiative, which means that the L'Abex Patrimoine funds are secure for the years to come, and it means that we will be able to continue to go far for PhDs, for research endeavors, and international cooperation. The other point that I wanted to mention is that we knew it from the start. We kind of had that intuition, but that heritage is such a crucial thing. We would never had a foundation for heritage science. We wouldn't have come together if we were not convinced of this. But heritage in its material dimension, in its relationship and its not material aspect, is a crucial aspect, because heritage is a part of ourselves. I agree with what was said earlier. It's not just memory. It's something that much more corporeal, much more part of your own body. That means that you can't just look towards the future. You can't look towards tomorrow, build a society if you do not take that dimension into account. So what you do here, what you do at your organizations throughout the world, is a way of bringing to the new generations keys so that they can actually build. And all of this faced with major challenges such as climate change, technological challenges, and wars. We talked about negative heritage. I had never heard of that notion. It's something that, you learn something every day. So all of these are challenges for the transition that are quite significant. So beyond research, there are two dimensions. The first one is Europe as a human society, as a human construct. A lot has been said about this during the symposium. The war in Ukraine shows how it's urgent to start thinking about how to build Europe together, needs to be rethought. And the second thing is training, because training, we know how important it is to preserve, to also create. And I know I only have 2 seconds left, so I'm about to finish. It's terrible to have this prompter. Pascal, this is not a nice thing to do. So I want to talk about training quickly. I'm very happy to say to be able to contribute to the initiative through university. First of all, is the PhD that will work on creative industries, and not just that. Of course, the patrimonialization of creation processes, which is quite interesting. And the second thing is that new professions at the Château de Versailles, that is being developed at the Château de Versailles, because there's a question of craft, of folk art. And a lot of people have talked about Notre Dame. It's one of the challenges is being able to keep the know-how, this heritage of know-how. Thank you very much, Pascal. Thank you very much, Guy Retailleau. You are at the head of the University of Paris-Saclay. You know the Labex heritage that was the forefather of the foundation. There was the University of Versailles-Saint-Quentin, and because of the development of the university landscape, is now part of a larger pole that is in Paris-Saclay. That is the reason why you are here with us today. Thank you very much, Pascal. Thank you for reminding everyone, which means that I'm also here on behalf of Alain Bu, because Paris-Saclay and with Cergy, you know, CY. I'm an intimate friend of François, as it were. So I call it CY, that is part of the foundation as well. And I really enjoyed, I'm not going to repeat what François said, I absolutely agree with everything he said, but what I liked about acting plurality, something that was mentioned earlier, it's something that we can really do, and there are a few things that I would like to say about acting plurality. You talked about the University of Saint-Quentin, which is one of the stakeholders, is an important player, so we'll see that there's also CNRS is going to talk about it, where there are mixed units. So another very important player. There's also the CIA. We talked about Notre Dame, l'Iramat in the plateau of Saclay that plays a great role in the restoration, renovation, rehabilitation of Notre Dame. There's also Paris-Saclay with a law aspect that is very important. It's one of the little nuggets of our program, which means that there are plurality in the number of institutions that work, university, national research organizations that come together and really bring their own skills, which means that the interdisciplinary aspect is extremely important. As was said earlier, it brings together communities. That is the point of creating that university. We try to bring together the power of all of this. There's lots of different disciplinary approaches. There's a graduate school. There's also a human science pole. But there's also another part that talks about digitization. There's also physics, chemistry. We have platforms, the opening of very big platforms. We have Soleil, and we have other parts that are dedicated to heritage. This one that is very focused on that, but there are other ones that work on characterizing materials that are used in heritage. So we work on other lines that don't work only in heritage, with the Louvre, for instance, that comes to try to characterize samples. So mixing all these communities and working at the European level, we'll see it on some of the platforms, but also on the cooperations that can exist and that can bring together with the opening of knowledge, accessibility, and also cooperation and working together is a word that was used a lot, and that really is a feature of the current developments. It was part of heritage sciences, but it is really one of the defining features of opening these communities through interdisciplinary approach. Technology, data science, digitization, technologies to characterize with, physics, engineering, IT that are really present and also opening towards society. And that's the whole issue about accessibility. And here, one of the important players is culture. When you hear Saclay, you think hard sciences, natural sciences, experimental sciences, but it's not just that. Our university, the science university has this part, social, human sciences, engineering, and life sciences is really a feature of what we do. So the fact of bringing all of this together under university institutional group, I think it's great. That's my great dream. François has taught me that we could have an architecture school, for instance, that would really supplement the university. And all of this enables us to open towards heritage science. We have partnership with Centre Pompidou, with Louvre. So the link with culture is really what is going to able to make heritage science really alive within our organizations through culture, through heritage science. So we talked about sustainable development. I say it's not just sustainable. It's not just development that has to be sustainable, but the distribution of means, accessibility of everything that citizens need. All of this is under that heading, and heritage is a large part of that. So doing that as a participating science through and for society is something that is sort of defined as a cross-cutting discipline in our university, and in my opinion, heritage really is a good example of that. At Saclay, we have a small graduate school. If you look at physics and medicine and life sciences, those are really big graduate schools, but we have a small one for heritage. It's something that we really believe in. We try to bring communities together, to make them work together, cross and all various disciplines, and something that we really put at the top of our pile, really top of the priorities, because we believe that it's going to make us grow, develop as part of our university that is more experimental science university. So I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, because, the developments that were broached that I absolutely adhere to need to be developed, and institutions are there to support them in all different kinds of directions. Thank you so much.
So intersectoriality and interdisciplinarity, that to you, that exist in your respective establishments, and it is stimulated further still by your belonging to an organization such as Fondation des Sciences du Patrimoine, where they come together with the heritage institutions, as you were talking about, can really and they can work closely in this dialogue between research and the professionals from the heritage sector, and can enable us really to rise to the challenges that you were mentioned. So thank you for everything that you do. So the CNRS, Marie-Gaille, is really a big support, a major support, a robust one for heritage sciences, not only the Institute of Social and Human Sciences that you chair, but also other institutes and bodies from the CNRS. Thank you, Pascal. First, I would like to Antoine Petit sends his apologies, but he couldn't at the last minute. Something came up, so I am here, and I am representing him today here. So, Pascal, you were asking the question of knowing how we were going to engage ourselves to commit for the heritage sciences in the future, and it's a question which I believe the CNRS can answer with no concern. It's not always the case. So the first key point comes back to this interdisciplinary approach that Sylvie was talking about, because the heritage as a focus for research enables one to express the close alliance of the 10 bodies that make up the CNRS, 3, maybe 4 in particular. It's that of social and human sciences, environment one, that of chemistry, and with regard to instrumentalization of the civic. And those 4 bodies work together, each in their own way, to study
to study heritage and all pertaining to it, sometimes for chemistry, to the really molecular level, and to bring together and gather information that were considered maybe just 5 years ago as acultural, which were neglected, but which enable us to aggregate and bring together new information. Archaeology is a priority of the Institute of Social and Human Sciences, and the Institute of the Environment also contributes to that. But in the human and social sciences, beyond archaeology, there's anthropology, of course, but maybe other disciplines that are not so expected, such as law or political sciences, through work on the legislation of heritage and the rights of human sciences. So we have been working in the CNRS on a number of specific projects, such as those which look at visual arts, looking to consolidate a certain number of tools in order to develop projects in visual arts, once with regard to documentation, but also of reconstruction. Another project that we've really been working on, and it's ongoing, is that of the constitution of an open digital heritage, notably through the work from a certain number of research units, and in order to enable to make available at once for the specialists, but also for citizens and the general public, the knowledge of European heritage with shared digital goods. So we're focusing through all this research, which is very diverse, you'll have understood that, on a certain number of stakes, which are of our era, and we're really looking to be close to those stakes, asking questions about the way in which territories build up and make a heritage through their culture, and maybe to look at from a critical point of view with regard to some identity positions. I'm working on the damage to heritage through climate change, and working on inclusivity with regard to public, some people who may not have access to it and who may be prevented, in inverted commas, and also working with our university partners on ideas around co-construction, co-design of research with the societies and companies. So also difficult stakes that we find ourselves confronted with on the scientific plan, and we mustn't brush that under the carpet. Question of costs of budgets, which are getting ever higher for research around heritage with regard to the ideas of instrumentation. And then beyond just the scientific aspect, there's also the constitution of stakes around how to approach research with regard to the amount of data which is available, but there's also extra scientific concepts there with context of danger, of urgency that we have talked about over these past 2 days. So the CNRS at its level is looking to work in a European space with regard to research by favoring the realization of realization throughout Europe, looking at digs throughout Europe and research, and with really regard to the infrastructure ELI, and by financing outside pandemic period research for the searchers and university lecturers in France and abroad. So maybe I'd conclude by raising one point, which is the following one, which brings us back to science and to the scientific approach as a heritage topic, because that maybe not has been at the heart of what we've been talking about, but it appears to me that if we're all looking at heritage as a research object, we're also looking at a certain number of restitutions, Univers Science and its museum, which is going to evolve and is going to bring to the fore science and the scientific approach as objects, cultural objects, which belong to heritage and needs to be preserved and brought to the fore in our society. So we go from the most fundamental research to really the idea of science in research. CNRS will continue to be committed with the different bodies and ministries around the questions of heritage research. Thank you. I'll give the floor now to Mr. Paquet. So I'll seize this opportunity to say once again how grateful we are all of the support brought to us by the European Commission to the heritage science, research around heritage, the links with the cultural industry, the creative industries and sectors. So I'm delighted that you're here to speak to us today. Thank you. Hello, everyone, and thank you for having invited me and for having enabled a lot of my colleagues throughout the whole European Commission, whether it be in culture, research or labs, to participate in your works and talks over these past 2 days, and indeed a European research, which is that of the program, the framework research, and those are the 27 members looking to aggregate and bring together their capabilities, and they're really mobilized and around the culture and heritage. I'll say a few words about that, but I would like to start, if I may, by saying my colleagues have told me about how rich these exchanges were, and also the context in which the exchanges took place. This unbelievably brutal war in Ukraine, which raises questions about Europe, which brings together Europe and shows how much our values are anchored in our history, in our narrative, in our culture, and how this heritage, we can see this in Ukraine, how important it is for our societies, for each and every one of us, the people from Ukraine, the refugees, the ones fighting also for their country, for their nation. They have put their culture very visibly at the center of their preoccupations and concerns. So this might be a reminder that our values, our democracy, which appear to go without saying for Europeans historically. They need to be defended, and they will be defended with Ukraine. That Maria Gabriel, the Commissioner for Research, with several colleagues and ourselves, with the local and the national administrations, we are implementing this week a platform so that European scientists can take in and help us, Ukrainian scientists, but in culture, I'm sure that it's absolutely the same approach. I'm aware of that, and I can but encourage each and every one of us to take part in that. So my colleagues have learnt a lot over these 2 days, they tell me. So I'd like to say that I've learnt a lot, but so I've just arrived 60 minutes back. I won't say that, but my colleagues have learnt a lot, and I can confirm that these 2 days of work, of this symposium, the frame program is what trying to bring for structure in the member states, in universities, the CNRS, and elsewhere, also in this 27 member states in this domain. And 3 priorities which I like to underline. You're all aware of them, but they are extremely important, notably for the conclusion of our works today. The first one is the investment that we are going to do by your side on a platform to create this European cloud, which is so much expected, and my colleagues are working with European colleagues, famed ones. Some of you in the room here today, and we'll present over the forthcoming days a first assessment report on the general architecture of this platform. It is scheduled in the context of Horizon Europe, and this is a major priority for the European Commission. To maybe up to 100 million euros invested over the 2-3 years to come, so significant budgets and means. But this cloud will not be constructed, designed by just a few colleagues from the European Commission. All of us need to be involved. So I really want to see a mobilization around architecture, the governance, the financing, and the sustainability of this European cloud, which is so necessary. Second topic, it's the industries, creative industries and cultural industries, which are naturally at the heart of our societies, including, of course, in the cultural heritage, the intangible cultural heritage that we see in this Ukrainian drama. These cultural industries are, of course, a source of jobs, of wealth, and the European Commission in the current ongoing work programs and over the forthcoming years will attach specific importance to those industries and sectors with a significant financing. So I really encourage all of you to really come together, all together, and mobilize yourselves with the help of these European programs. And this final point I really found was really talked about earlier. It was the articulation between the creative cultural industries, the heritage, and the attention brought to sustainability. I'm delighted that we both have the sustainability goals on our labels and 2020 Horizon and with Horizon Europe we're going to continue to invest in materials and methodologies and tools and to have the investments in place so that you can really work on this on the sustainability with regard to our cultural heritage. This is also in the line of the new European Bauhaus, which is probably more famed in this room than elsewhere where I intervene. This idea of inclusivity, of ecology, it also carries the actions of the Cultural Commission. And then from the 9th of 12th of June, there's the first festival of the new European Bauhaus. And we have currently opened on the site a call for projects, whether they be physical projects in Brussels or indeed projects which would occur in the member states at the same time. And I hope sincerely that some of you will be looking at the site and will respond to this call to arms to take part in this European festival around what is part of our cultural heritage. I wanted to conclude on those points. And once again, thank you and well done. Bravo for these 2 days. And we will be by your sides, naturally, to invest in our future. Thank you. So let me reassure you, there are many more of us in the auditorium, but it is the end of the day here. Some colleagues have planes, automobiles or trains to take. They have left, so Isabelle Palot-Froissart is going to bring the words of conclusion now before we give the floor to the Czech Republic. Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup,
Thank you very much, Pascal, for handing the baton to me. Dear Minister, dear friends, I would like to start by discussing a historic point. There were 50 people who started with a project. It was a project about a heritage center, the creation of a heritage center in Cergy, which did not come to fruition, but created a true momentum in heritage sciences, which ultimately resulted in this conference. So sometimes a failed project can give rise to much greater things in effect. So these 2 days, organized by the participants around this table and the 2 universities, the presidents of which are here, the Ministry of Culture, CNRS, and with very strong support from the European Commission, and I would really like to thank them. These 2 days, of course, you attended and you saw how intense the proceedings were. We had a considerable number of participants, of course, across a number of panel discussions, but there were almost 1,200 participants in total, which is remarkable, to discuss heritage sciences and heritage more generally. And I am, of course, delighted by the success of our proceedings. And in conclusion, I would like to perhaps draw a few teachings that the Fondation du Patrimoine would like to, Fondation des Sciences du Patrimoine would like to work on. I shall probably finish by telling you about its national attributions, but I will start by telling you the role it seeks to play in Europe through a number of initiatives. Let me start with the joint programming initiative on cultural heritage and global change, which it fully supports by providing secretariat, and Pascal Lévaux chairs that. And I would like to say that this joint programming body, which has been in existence for more than a decade, has become particularly momentous under the French presidency by publishing a new strategic agenda in 2021, by setting up a cross-functional task force, mixing climate and heritage in order to draft a white paper on possible cooperation between heritage research and climate research. And by very recently welcoming a number of new members, a new full member, the Austrian Ministry of Research, and a new observer nation, Germany, who we will hope will become full member too eventually. Wonderful. So within that framework, our foundation also has a project, an action project of coordination called ARCH, subjected to the Commission and designed to create an alliance on heritage research and coordinate member states and the various players in research and innovation and cultural heritage in order to prepare for, and I hope this will succeed, a European partnership by 2024-2025. And this consortium currently includes 30 partners from 19 countries in charge of popularizing heritage sciences across Europe. It also includes ICROM, or the Time Machine Network, or the alliance Una Europa, the University Alliance. Not to mention the IRIS project, which some of you discussed earlier, which comes from a string of projects supported by the European Commission, ABSTEC, Eurotech, Charisma, Hyperion, Hyperion HS, which is on the European roadmap for the S3 infrastructure and the national roadmap. So this project aims to facilitate cooperation between scholars from diverse institutions and disciplines through a common European infrastructure to address the complex problems posed by the conservation of heritage, museum collections, monuments, archaeological sites, all of the issues we discussed today and yesterday. So I won't further discuss the advancement of the project. We're at step 1, so to speak, and I very much hope that it will reach step 2 as quickly as possible and be implemented by 2023. I'd like to apologize. I see that I've run out of time, but I would like to focus on heritage sciences in France briefly, which has been in the process of structuring for a number of years, with accelerated momentum recently with a number of initiatives mentioned by the various participants in this final panel discussion, so the LabX, Patrimex, and other LabXs, and projects such as Espadon. But let us also, in the long term, talk about advances achieved. Remember that the agreement was signed in 1992, the first framework agreement, renewed every 5 years since, with more than 100 research units, many of which are working on heritage, some work on other topics, but many of them have a heritage bias. Let us also talk about research networks like CEN, or the support provided by a number of local governments in heritage research, and particularly the Île-de-France region, which has just renewed its interest for the issue of material heritage in these domaines d'intérêt majeur of the region. So the Foundation's mission in the coming years will be to pursue work, support interdisciplinary research evoked, and support young scholars, young researchers to foster new partnerships, new interdisciplinary approaches, and notably to find new partnerships on the regional level. The Foundation is very focused on the Paris region at the moment and needs to branch out across France to strengthen its position on the European and international scene also in its field of competence. So a colloquium such as this helps us to create new links across Europe and enrich our knowledge of heritage science, which is often still rather scattered, in order to enrich our knowledge, but also to create practices for professionals and strengthen the political decisions and mutualize our resources in order to go further. So let us wish that all of the goodwill expressed today in terms of the knowledge and preservation and transmission of heritage may contribute to the cohesiveness of Europe, in which we all believe, of course, and which is subjected to a very hard period of trials, which is not known since it was founded. And I shall stop very shortly, don't worry. But I would like to invite you not to forget that this colloquium is followed by a number of partner events, 3 of them. One called Enseigner dans un monde en mouvement in the coming days, l'artisanat, handicrafts, and the value of manual professions in the challenges of tomorrow in the Versailles campus on March 18th. Research and training at the École des Chartes on 17th and 18th of March. And opportunity of valuing cultural heritage in urban areas in Saint-Ouen on March 17th and 18th. So, let me finish by very warmly thanking those who worked in the wings. Emmanuel Poirot and the foundation team, Léa Orlandi, Clara Pined, Chloé Mirouz, members of the steering committee, members of the International Scientific Committee, chaired by Pascal, to select the contributions. The teams of the Louvre, BNF, École du Louvre, Centre de Recherche et Restauration des Musées de France, and Pompidou Center, who hosted our proceedings, the interpreters, who had a lot to do, moderators of online questions, as well as the Cergicom technical team who helped us. And I'm sure that you all had the opportunity to enjoy the help of all of our hostesses and hosts. And again, many thanks to Pascal Liévaux, whose commitment has been constant since the project was initiated. And now, over to Mr. Minister, Deputy Minister in charge of Cultural Heritage of the Czech Republic, who is giving us the great honor of his presence today.
Dear colleagues, it's an honor for me to address you briefly on this occasion, which is one of the most important events connected with French presidency of European Union in culture sector. Let me introduce several main points of upcoming Czech presidency regarding the care of cultural heritage and scientific research in this branch. I feel it's a great news that Europa Nostra has decided to hold the European Cultural Heritage Summit 2022 in Prague from 25th to 27th September of this year. I'm sure that this excellent network of NGOs can substantially contribute to coordinate goodwill to help Ukraine cultural institutions and initiatives. Another great opportunity to meet colleagues from European countries on the scientific basis will be the conference Current Challenges of the Care of Cultural Monuments, organized by the National Heritage Institute, an official expert advisory body on national level in the Czech Republic. It will take place from 9th to 11th of November in the newly restored building, historic building of the National Museum in Prague. The most important meeting of cultural heritage professionals will be held from 20th to 28th of August 2022 in Prague. It is 26th General Conference of the International Council of Museums. We are very happy about success of our nomination after decades of strong effort. Former Czechoslovakia has been really close to organize this triennial worldwide event in 1968. Unfortunately, Soviet invasion ruined all plans. Russian tanks reached the National Museum in the very heart of Prague, and bullets from machine guns sprayed the facade of museum. Young people protesting against occupation died. Now we can witness even much deeper tragedy in Ukraine. Europe is quite different than it's several weeks ago. We are facing a new barbarism in Russian brutal assault to peaceful Ukraine nation. The brutality of Russian war criminal acts is greater than we, people from post-communist countries, have ever anticipated. Enemy weapons are targeted to cultural identity of Ukraine. We are people devoted to the care of cultural heritage. What we can do apart humanitarian and weaponry support is to continue in our work focused on shared heritage of Europe, on our cultural values. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to express my conviction that events like this can contribute to strengthen the European identity. Let me invite you to the Czech Republic to support events mentioned before. I wish you all the best in current difficult situation, and I thank you very much for your attention. Merci beaucoup.
Eh bien, je crois que...
Well, I think that all that remains for us is to go and have a drink to finish this second day of proceedings. So many thanks to all of you for your participation. So, a few housekeeping details about what is going to happen after these 2 days of proceedings. In May and June, we'll have the publication of a position paper and a report on the proceedings, and then there will be also replays of the sessions available on the website next week for those of you who are unable to attend. And in the meantime, you can go and watch all of the papers published alongside this conference, which are also available on the website, around 30 of them, which discuss a number of very interesting subjects. And don't forget to return your interpreting translation headsets to the hostesses that are waiting for you outside. And many thanks to those who stayed until the end.